Hi, I'm Marcel, and welcome to my presentation on the Brujah from Vampire the Masquerade. Also, I might be a little sick or something, so sorry if that gets in the way of my recording somehow. So, who are the Brujah? The Brujah would likely fancy themselves as some sort of revolutionary, people who make a change, who fight against the status quo. They are here to make sure the people at the top don't ever get too complacent, and so that the people at the bottom always have a voice to be heard. Ideally, anyhow. A lot of other groups simply see the Brujah or the rabble as, well, exactly that. Rabble, filth, scum, just random punks who are trying to make trouble because they're just punks like that. In a world as steeped in politics as Vampire the Masquerade, a lot of Brujah, for maybe right or wrong reasons, are seen as a nuisance for what they do. As a Brujah, you are a person of passion, of great emotion. You have a fire in your eyes, in your soul, even. But sometimes that can get in your way. In vampire courts, and hell, sometimes even on the streets, keeping your cool, keeping your composure is very important to not making enemies or to not making the wrong moves in dealings, or, well, just to not go crazy and accidentally breach the masquerade, if you're part of a sect that cares about that anyhow. But where your overwhelming passion may sometimes prove to be a bane to you, the Brujah overall are capable of rallying many people together for a common cause and using their force of personality to unite the masses under their banner. Despite what they're seen as in the modern knights, long ago the Brujah were actually sort of the top class of vampires, at least in places like Rome, where they would be the main leaders of that time period. That was until Ventru came along and kind of stole the whole show from them because that's how vampire politics go. And the Brujah really haven't let that go since. They sort of take that as their driving force behind what they do. They took from us, so we're gonna be a pain in the side for them. Now, as for the type of people that the Brujah embrace, there's not a criteria for the Brujah to embrace. They just kind of do it on a whim. It's whatever they feel like doing, really. The most guidance that the books give is that they embrace people that they feel like could further their own goals, or they embrace people basically to spite them. And that's a lot of vampires. A lot of vampires do that. They're the most chaotic type of embracers, one of them, anyways. So it's actually really easy to make a Brujah character that feels like they fit because you could be anything. Yeah, there are opportunities for people not like the stereotypes of the other clans to somehow get embraced by those clans for one reason or another. But with the Brujah, it's really just par for the course. As for the sects that they are primarily a part of, somehow the Camarilla is number one. That's their main thing, with some in the Sabbat in second place. Which doesn't seem like it makes sense because the Camarilla, because they are the status quo. They are the very thing that you sought to destroy, and yet you're a part of it. It's explained that the reason for this is that because the Camarilla are the status quo, the Brujah being part of that, you always have something to rebel against. And also, by being part of that, you make sure that those people who are at the top never get too comfortable because your gang of rebels is always there to keep them in check. Supposedly. Now, I'm going to depart from the actual lore for a bit and sort of impose my own feelings and ideas for the Brujah. In my homebrew, Brujah are primarily anarch vampires because I've fleshed out the anarchs a little bit more in my own homebrew world and them as a sort of movement or society, organization, what have you. But even then, I still feel like they makes a lot of sense as Anarch Kindred. Beyond that, independent makes a lot of sense too. If you're against the status quo, why bind yourself to a certain organization and its rules? Be your own thing. They're about the same in Vampire 5th edition. The main difference that they have is that whereas in the older versions, they primarily like physical attributes and then mental and social are about on par with them after that. Whereas in 5th edition, they don't necessarily prefer mental attributes over social ones now, but there is a certain subgroup of Brujah which is referred to as Helens, which have prominent mental attributes, and they sort of abide by this idea that to break down the system, you have to have an understanding of the system, and they participate in your good old-fashioned political insider corruption. As for the blood of the Brujah, the disciplines you would get include Celerity, it's vampire super speed. You go really quick, and it's broken because you can get extra turns and stuff. Potence, which is vampire super strength. And Presence, which archetypally is sort of vampire charisma, but it does a little more than that. It's not just you being charismatic and being able to, say, sway the motion of the people. You can just go ahead and alter their emotions. You can rouse in them rage or passion. You can entice people to your persona, and you can even summon people from wherever. They just, I believe, get this sort of feeling where it's like, ooh, I gotta go and find this person for whatever reason. The reason being you used a vampire power on them, but they don't know that, probably. The Brujah do come with the Blood Rage weakness, however, which makes it so that your passion somewhat works against you because your inner beast is also fueled by that intense passion and emotion and rage. It makes it so that the difficulty rolls to resist or control your frenzies is increased by 2. It also makes it so that willpower can't be spent to avoid a frenzy, but it can be spent to end a frenzy early still. It's not the most out there weakness, but it makes sense. It's pretty flavorful for them. As for what it was changed in V5, you have the same disciplines, that wasn't changed. Sure, the disciplines do different things, and now Celerity isn't overpowered to hell and back, but the general idea is the same. You still have your Blood Rage, but because of how the systems work in V5, now instead, your dice pool to resist your frenzy is reduced by the Bane's severity instead of the difficulty fluctuating. They also have an alternate weakness that you can take called Violence, where any messy criticals that you land on any non-combat skill tests causes you to do aggravated damage to the target of your actions. You just kind of get carried away and your rage carries out on whatever you're trying to affect, which can be really bad if it's a person. But a point of willpower can be spent to turn into superficial damage. You also have a compulsion called Rebellion, which basically makes it so that either A, you want to change someone's opinion, you really want them to fluctuate on their principles, I suppose, because that's sort of like changing their status quo, or you want to do the opposite of whatever you're meant to do. Did that Ventru snob tell you to do this? Who cares if he's your superior? You don't want to do that. You know what? You're gonna cause them a little bit of trouble and do the exact opposite of what they told you to do. Because who the hell are they to control you? Thank you for attending my presentation on the Brujah. I feel like they're one of the more relatable vampire clans, at least a little bit. We've all been teenagers. I'm sure we've all had those phases where we just kind of feel angry at the world around us, for good or bad reasons, but it's there. The Brujah's never been one of my preferred clans, but they have good disciplines if you want a power game. Celerity is always gonna be good for you. There's a fair amount of things you can do with your character based on the clan's stereotypical personalities. But also, I feel like they're really good for newer players because anything can be a Brujah just because they're embracing patterns. It's just one of those things like the Caitiff where if your character's personality doesn't seem to really fit any of the clans, just put them in here and it'll be fine. Anyhow, that's all for this video, so bye bye!